the time to listen to our presentation today. I'm Caroline, this is Mari, Trent, Renee, and Nolan. By a quick show of hands, can I see how many of you use social media networking sites? Okay, so it looks like everybody. And then can I see how many of you watch Netflix or play video games? Okay, so everybody again. And then can I see how many of you guys use these forms of media while doing your homework or studying? Okay, so a good portion as well.
Okay, so many of you raised your hands when we asked you if you had ever used social networking or streaming services like Netflix or Hulu while doing your schoolwork. Have you ever thought about how this might have an effect on you or the way that you learn? So that is the purpose of our research study. We decided to research the effects of media consumption on college students' academic performance. Media is defined as the means of communication we use to reach and influence people, whether that's their news, music, education, or other data. The average person worldwide spends 7.5 hours a day consuming media, which is almost a third of your day. And the average American uses 363 minutes of digital data a day and 369 minutes of traditional media a day. And while digital media is slowly overtaking traditional forms of media, traditional media is still prevalent today. And traditional media includes things like radio, TV, and printed news, while digital media includes video games, streaming services, and social networking sites. So while all these create a very connected world, they may also have some negative outcomes. Some previous research that we looked at showed that there was a negative mental health outcome linked to media usage, including suicidal thoughts, loneliness, and decreased empathy. However, there were other studies that we looked at that showed no link between negative outcomes and media use. So the previous data on this topic is inconclusive, which is why we decided to conduct this study. Now I'm going to pass it to Mari to talk about our research question.
For our research question, we wanted to gather more data on this topic, and our research question is, how does media consumption affect college students' academic performance? We wanted to collect more data on this because we wanted to look at the link between media usage and academics. And we also wanted to expand on studies that were done previously while focusing on a more specific demographic. So in some of the previous research we have looked at, specifically one by Al-Salad-Tallaway in 2018, 38.3% of people strongly agreed that there was a correlation between their academic performance and their media usage, while 20% felt neutral about this connection, and 13.3% said there was no problem between the connection between the two factors. While this was more of an opinion-based survey, we did collect actual statistics regarding the link between media usage and academic performance.
Before conducting our research, we came up with two hypotheses. The first being if college students spend more time consuming media, their academic performance will be lower. And the second hypothesis is if college students use different forms of media accounts and subscriptions, their academic performance will also be lower.
For our survey, the independent variables we tested were the amount of time that college students spend using media, as well as the amount of accounts and subscriptions that each college student has. The dependent variable that we tested was students' grade point average or academic performance. Included in our survey was an introduction which gave some basic information about our survey, as well as a consent form for each participant to look over. Also, it included contact information for our group, as well as Dr. Park, in case you had any questions or concerns. The questions included in our survey included topics about media and also grade point average. These questions were multiple choice, sliders, and also Likert scales, which included strongly agree to negatively agree, or sorry, negatively disagrees. Also included were demographic questions such as age, gender, education level, credit hours, employment status. We thought these questions were important because there might have been some extraneous variables that would have had an effect on on the results of our survey. So we thought it was important to include these questions as well.
Our survey was ran through Qualtrics, and we emailed the link and posted it on our social media for college-age students to complete this. We asked in our email, many of our northern professors here, that they send it to their students, and then people just passed on the word. We gathered the information for roughly 2 weeks and fell short of our goal of 300 participants. We only had 265 responses in the end, but we still felt like that was enough to conclude our data.
So to get into the demographics from our survey results, the majorities were male at 44.55% and female at 54.09%. And that kind of did come up with what we expected, because the majority of Northern Michigan's students are female, with 58% of students at Northern are female. So it is kind of as we expected. For the age demographic, again, as we expected, the 18 to 24% would be the majority, and it was with 93.18%. And then another 5% in the 25 to 34 age range, and then the rest of the 1.81% were 35 to 44 and 55 plus. And so the other percentages can kind of be due to people like going back to school later.
For employment status for our participants, over 55% of the participants that took the survey had some sort of employment. We thought that, like I talked about before, the correlation between these different extraneous variables could have an effect. So if you're employed, you most likely wouldn't have as much time to study and do schoolwork, and you'd have to manage your time better. For current class standing, majority of the participants were seniors and juniors. All of the members in our groups are either senior or junior, so the people that we reached out to mainly were seniors and juniors. But also we did pass it out to different faculty members that then pass it on to their other students. We think that the main reason that they're mainly seniors and juniors is that, like I said before, our acquaintances and the people we mainly associate with are of junior and senior status. For education level, majority of the people that took the survey were had some college but no degree. We think that we had to actually clean some of the data, because as you can see, there was some results that had no high school degree, and this survey was based upon just for college students, so we had to remove this data because we wanted to see how college students, the effect of their media usage on their academic performance, and that can be measured with high school students. So yeah, and now I'm gonna pass it on to Trent to talk about our hypotheses results.
Alright, so looking at the results of our analysis, we were able to conclude this about our first hypothesis, which was if college students spend more time consuming media, their academic performance will be lower. We ran an Anova test and found a statistically significant difference between cumulative GPA levels. The average hours spent consuming media was significantly lower, with students who reported GPAs between 3.51 to 3.99 than students reporting GPAs from 2.51 to 3.0. This partially proves our hypothesis to be right, as the GPA levels correlated with lower number of hours spent using media. Unfortunately, there is no other correlation between GPA level and time consuming media. Yeah.
So for our second hypothesis, we also decided to use an Anova test of variance. This hypothesis again was students who use different forms of media subscriptions and accounts will have a lower academic performance. So for this test, we examined the types of media and their potential relationship to cumulative GPA levels. For this test, we also separated the forms of media variable into 5 sections: social media, podcasts, news subscriptions, TV streaming services, and video games, to see if there were any significant differences between each. And we found a statistically significant difference in 2 categories, which were social media and video game use. And that data showed on average, students who had a GPA between 2.01 to 2.5 used social media more than those who had GPAs between 2.51 to 3.99. So this supports our hypothesis, being that a higher GPA correlates to a lower number of hours of spent using social media. In the video game section, the data revealed that the average video game use was lower in those with a GPA of 2.01 to 3.50 than those with a GPA of 3.51 to 3.99. And this was interesting information because it does not support our hypothesis. We had believed that higher video game use would correlate with a lower cumulative GPA, but this analysis shows the opposite. So this could be a result of extraneous variables, but since it was only significant on certain levels between the social media and video games and not our other 3 sections, the data is inconclusive.
To conclude, for hypothesis 1, we found some statistically significant results between time spent consuming media daily and academic performance. And then for hypothesis 2, we did find some statistically significant results between social media use, video game use, and academic performance. And although our data has inconclusive results, like many of the studies we had found, we hope that our research helps to further other researchers in their quest for their answers. Thank you for taking your time to listen to